Okay, recording. Here we go. Do you have anyone in your family that considers themselves a business owner? What are you doing to support that business, and how is it going? One day, do you want to become an owner of your own business? What kind of amazing products do you think the world needs that you can provide for them? Well, the good news about the United States and its economics is that you can do just that, but it won't be an easy thing to do. Sources claim that small businesses represent nearly 95% of all American companies, accounting for 64% of all new jobs created in the US between 1993 and 2011. These numbers have been falling for decades, however, and big business has been flourishing. Small business growth and success rates have been on a steady decline since the 1970s. Between 1997 and 2012, the number of small manufacturers fell by more than 70,000, and local retailers saw their ranks diminish by 108,000. On top of changes in the market and commerce, the COVID-19 pandemic and the following government response did no favors for small business. According to a report in November of 2020, small business revenue was down 31%, and amongst independent restaurants and other hospitality businesses, revenue fell 58%. Big box stores were able to stay open during the pandemic, while smaller shops were forced closed. Publix said that sales for the first 3 months of 2020 jumped to 10%, or $1 billion, and Kroger said its sales at stores open at least a year surged 30% in March of 2020. Amazon and Walmart, the country's two biggest companies, together have earned an extra $10.7 billion over the last year's profits during the pandemic, which is a 56% increase. Stock prices for Amazon and Walmart have soared 70% and 36% respectively since the start of the pandemic. On top of these corporations dominating the private sector, they have massive amounts of capital, influencing policy decisions by paying lobbyists, lawyers, and politicians to get their way, while the government gets enthusiastic cooperation, compliance, and campaign donors out of the deal too. Meaning the government and corporations have aligned themselves in their interests, expelling the interests of the little guy. These massive corporations kill competition and force many people to sell their products on Amazon as a medium between business and customer, while making third-party sellers pay fees to Amazon, in turn making Amazon even wealthier. In addition to third-party sellers, Amazon also sells its own products under the Amazon Basics moniker, along with other brand names. Sellers have complained that Amazon unfairly competes with third-party businesses on its own platform, with some alleging that it directly knocked off their goods. Stacy Michael, a researcher at the Minneapolis-based Institute for Local Self-Reliance, says that once you become a third-party seller, 15% of your revenue typically goes towards Amazon, and more if you use their warehouse and fulfillment services. Amazon also uses the data that it gathers from monitoring your sales to compete against you by offering some of the same items. And it owns the customer relationship, particularly if you use Amazon's fulfillment services, meaning that you store your goods in its warehouses and you pay Amazon to handle the shipping. In that case, you cannot communicate with your customer except through Amazon's system, and Amazon monitors these communications. If you go out of bounds, it can suspend you as a seller. So what does all of this mean? Well, say goodbye to the days of living and working without having someone breathing down your neck about what you are selling or saying. Let's say you wanted to open a boutique and sell clothes, but found that not enough people shop locally for it to be sustainable. Your next best option is to sell your clothes online. So you'll be competing with Amazon, eBay, Craigslist, and other online marketplaces. So as the old adage goes, if you can't beat them, join them. But does joining them actually help you, or are you just becoming another money-making machine for large corporations? Not only do big companies interrupt the money flow in the private sector, they also contribute to climate change and pollution by a considerable margin. Amazon said it emitted 44.4 million metric tons of carbon dioxide in 2018, a number that comes close to pollution rates of some small nations like Denmark. Their carbon dioxide impact increased by 19% in 2020, which is almost 8.5 million metric tons more than they produced in 2018. Oceana analyzed e-commerce packaging data and found that Amazon generated 465 million pounds of plastic packaging waste in 2019. This includes air pillows, bubble wrap, and other plastic packaging items added to the approximately 7 billion Amazon packages delivered in 2019. The report found that Amazon's estimated packaging waste in the form of air pillows alone could circle the earth more than 500 times. Oceana estimates that up to 22.44 million pounds of Amazon's plastic packaging waste entered and polluted the world's freshwater and marine ecosystems in 2019, the equivalent of dumping a delivery van payload of plastic into the oceans every 70 minutes. Neglecting domestic supply chains in favor of foreign alternatives is leaving us vulnerable and dependent. Even without a crisis, shipments go from bad to worse, maybe coming from places like India. Your shipments could be held up in customs, or your supplies could be damaged during shipment, which is time lost. If this scenario occurs, you could be protected if you had a reliable American supplier. The more you use an American manufacturer, the more the products, expertise, and manpower they will have to meet your needs. Here's a good example. You may pay 40 cents for small woven polyethylene bags for us to produce at an American plant, and you will have your bags at your company's door within 4 to 6 weeks. You may pay 50% less per bag with a foreign manufacturer, but it will take between 3 to 4 months for your bags to come in. That is, if everything runs smoothly with production, weather, economics, shipping, customs, quality, and the pandemic. This is a huge gamble and a long wait. You may run out of inventory on your small woven bags by this point. In conclusion, I argue that people should be more conscientious of their spending habits and should pay attention to where their money goes and what kind of effort their money supports. These big businesses have a top priority, which is making money. While they do in fact make a lot of money, they don't always spread it fairly between their employees, and they almost always kill out their competition, their smaller competitors, limiting the places you can choose to shop at. While it is definitely convenient to be able to get anything you want from Amazon, using this service and not buying products locally will result in stores closing around you, leaving your town feeling like a lifeless old husk of a place that was once bustling with traffic, with the scars of old shop signs still visible on dilapidated commercial buildings, not to mention all the environmental damage that corporations like Amazon do. Walmart may be the only grocery shop you can choose at in town unless you want to go out of your way to get limited items at Amish markets or someplace equivalent. This is the direction that every small town in the United States is going if we choose convenience stores and online marketplaces over your local shops. Would you want to be controlled by a corporation? Do you want Walmarts and Targets to litter our urban sprawls, sucking out the unique qualities of the shops there? How fair do you think this whole issue is for people who just want their own store to provide a living for themselves and to provide for their own children? And this concludes my speech. And now we will move on to a question and answer segment. My first question is, what do you predict happening in cities due to this growth? Do you think that only small towns will die because of this, or possibly all shops as the shopping industry switches to virtual means? My prediction is that some shops within the city may stay open if they were to form a niche community. Like maybe a record store could stay open if they were open next to a neighborhood that was filled with hipsters or old timers who like records and come in and patronize their record store often. I believe that small grocery stores or grocery chains may remain open in the city if they are placed in a good spot, since everyone has to eat. Small towns are the most affected, which is why I mention them. Some suburban places I've seen are experiencing this same thing too. My next question is, do you believe that government regulation could be a viable solution to prevent Walmart from knocking out the competition? And if so, how? Well, this is a great question. I personally do not think that government regulation is the solution to all of our problems, as I believe that if enough people were to see all of the negative impacts that convenience culture has on our economy and our society, and if people supported the businesses around them, they would see a positive change in their livelihood. The change needs to come from the people. Which will they choose, faceless corporations or their neighbors? We already have antitrust laws on the book, and they have been used before, and its purpose is to enhance the competition in the market and to prevent monopolies from forming. I do not believe that we need to give the government any more power than it already has. And my final question is, what ways can small businesses actively do to drive more business within their doors, to accumulate more profit, and to compete with large business corporations. I believe that it truly depends on what kind of business you plan on opening. Are you an accountant? You might be able to keep a small firm open if you manage the right clientele within your local area. Or would you want to open a bar? Do you want to fix cars for a living? You might be able to get a decent spot in life if you provide a necessary service and are located in a spot with an abundant amount of potential customers. But the retail and the environment and the entertainment industry are dominated by huge internet entities and big box stores. You want a career where you are always needed. I recommend becoming skilled in a craft and working with electricity, carpentry, or plumbing, because someone is always going to want to call the handyman when something breaks. And my name is Elijah Arick, and thank you for listening to my speech.